For years, Lucy battled the emptiness left by infertility, enduring an exhausting journey of treatments, hopes, and frustrations. When she finally received the news she had dreamed of, she was pregnant through artificial insemination. She felt her life was about to take on a new meaning, but her joy was crushed by a devastating revelation. Her husband, the man who had vowed to love her forever, was having an affair with her best friend. The double betrayal not only destroyed her marriage, but also shattered her circle of trust. In a final blow, Lucy was thrown out of her home, leaving her to face her pregnancy and the challenges of an uncertain future on her own. However, at the peak of her pain, an unexpected call from the fertility clinic changed everything. The late autumn wind whistled through the streets of Columbus, Ohio, carrying with it the promise of an early winter. Lucy Pearson pulled her coat tighter around her slender frame as she hurried along High Street, her breath forming small clouds in the crisp air. At 35, Lucy's face still held a youthful charm, but her hazel eyes betrayed a weariness that spoke of battles fought and lost. She paused in front of a quaint boutique, her gaze lingering on a display of tiny onesies and delicate baby shoes. A familiar ache blossomed in her chest, a pain she had grown accustomed to over the years. Lucy allowed herself a moment, just one, to imagine a world where those items weren't just objects of longing but necessities for her own child. As she resumed her walk home, Lucy's mind wandered to the countless doctor's appointments, the hormone treatments, the roller coaster of hope and despair that had defined the last 5 years of her life. She and her husband, Mark, had started trying for a baby shortly after their wedding. Back then, their future had seemed so bright, so certain. Now, each passing month felt like another nail in the coffin of their dreams. Lucy climbed the steps to their modest 2-story home in the German village neighborhood. The house, with its red brick exterior and charming shutters, had once represented the beginning of their life together. Now, it felt more like a reminder of all they had failed to achieve. "Mark," she called out as she entered, shrugging off her coat. The silence that greeted her was nothing new. Mark had been working late more often than not lately, claiming the pressure at his law firm was mounting. Lucy tried to quash the nagging doubt that had taken root in her mind. She knew the strain of their fertility struggles had taken a toll on their marriage, but she clung to the hope that they would weather this storm together. As she made her way to the kitchen, Lucy's phone buzzed with a notification. It was a reminder for her appointment at the fertility clinic tomorrow. They were scheduled to discuss the next steps in their treatment plan. Lucy's stomach churned with a mixture of anticipation and dread. How many more times could they put themselves through this? How much more disappointment could their relationship withstand? That night, as she lay in bed beside Mark's sleeping form, Lucy stared at the ceiling, her mind a whirlwind of what-ifs and maybes. She thought about the life she had imagined for herself, the family she had always dreamed of having. The gulf between that dream and her reality seemed to widen with each passing day. Little did Lucy know that the appointment the next day would set in motion a series of events that would change her life forever. The waiting room at Midwest Fertility Specialists was a study in forced optimism. Soft pastel colors adorned the walls, and glossy magazines featuring beaming parents and chubby-cheeked babies littered the coffee tables. Lucy sat alone, her fingers nervously twisting the wedding band on her left hand. Mark had an important deposition that morning and couldn't make it. She told herself it was fine, that she was used to handling these appointments on her own, but the hollow feeling in her chest suggested otherwise. "Mrs. Pearson," a nurse with a kind smile appeared in the doorway. "Dr. Patel will see you now." Lucy followed the nurse down a corridor lined with success stories, photographs of grinning couples holding newborns, thank you cards with heartfelt messages of gratitude. Each image felt like a silent accusation, a reminder of her own failure to conceive. Dr. Anita Patel greeted Lucy with a warm handshake. "How are you feeling today, Lucy?" "Nervous," Lucy admitted, settling into the chair across from the doctor's desk. "I'm not sure how much more of this I can take." Dr. Patel's expression softened with understanding. "I know this journey has been incredibly difficult for you and Mark, but I have some news that might change everything." Lucy's heart began to race. She had learned long ago not to get her hopes up, but something in the doctor's tone made her lean forward, hanging on every word. "We've reviewed your latest test results, and I believe we've identified the root of your fertility issues," Dr. Patel explained. "With this new information, I'd like to propose we try a different approach: in vitro fertilization with a sperm donor. The words hit Lucy like a physical blow. A donor? The idea had never seriously crossed her mind. She and Mark had always assumed they would have a child that was biologically both of theirs, but as Dr. Patel continued to explain the process and the significantly higher success rates, Lucy felt a tiny spark of hope ignite in her chest. I'll need to discuss this with Mark, Lucy said, her mind reeling with the possibilities. Of course, Dr. Patel nodded. Take some time to think it over. But Lucy, I truly believe this could be your best chance at becoming a mother. As Lucy left the clinic, her steps felt lighter than they had in years. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where her arms weren't empty, where the spare bedroom in their house was transformed into a nursery filled with laughter and love. She spent the rest of the day in a daze, alternating between excitement and apprehension. How would Mark react to the idea of using a donor? Would he see it as giving up, or as a new opportunity? By the time she heard his key in the lock that evening, Lucy had rehearsed a dozen different ways to broach the subject. But the moment Mark walked through the door, Lucy knew something was wrong. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed as if he'd been crying. "Mark, what's happened?" Lucy rushed to him, her own news forgotten in the face of his obvious distress. He couldn't meet her eyes. "Lucy, we need to talk." Those 4 words sent a chill down her spine. She followed him to the living room, her mind racing with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Mark sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. When he finally looked up at her, the pain and guilt in his eyes made Lucy's breath catch in her throat. "I've made a terrible mistake," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant for it to happen, but I've been having an affair." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Lucy grabbed the edge of the coffee table to steady herself, sure she must have misheard. "What? With who?" Mark's next words shattered what was left of her world. "With Sarah." Sarah, Lucy's best friend since college, the woman who had been her rock through every failed pregnancy test, every crushing disappointment. The betrayal was so enormous, so all-encompassing, that Lucy couldn't process it. "How long?" The words came out as a strangled whisper. 6 months, Mark admitted, tears streaming down his face. "Lucy, I'm so sorry, the stress of everything, the pressure. It just happened." But Lucy wasn't listening anymore. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of deceit. How many times had she cried on Sarah's shoulder about her marital troubles? How many times had Mark held her, comforted her, all while carrying on this secret? "Get out." The words were quiet, but filled with a steel that surprised even Lucy herself. Mark looked up, startled. "What?" "I said get out." Lucy's voice rose, fueled by a rage she didn't know she possessed. "Get out of this house, get out of my life." "Lucy, please, let's talk about this," Mark pleaded, reaching for her. She recoiled from his touch as if it burned. "There's nothing to talk about. You and Sarah, you've destroyed everything, just go." The next few hours passed in a blur. Mark packed a bag, his pleas for forgiveness falling on deaf ears. Lucy sat on the stairs watching as the man she had loved for over a decade walked out of their home, out of their life together. As the door closed behind him, the reality of her situation came crashing down. In the span of a day, she had gone from the hope of finally becoming a mother to losing both her husband and her best friend. The sobs that racked her body were violent, primal things, the sound of a heart shattering into a million pieces. Lucy didn't know how long she sat there, curled up at the bottom of the stairs, before the shrill ring of her phone cut through her grief. With shaking hands, she answered, not even checking the caller ID. "Mrs. Pearson?" A voice she didn't recognize. "This is Claire from Midwest Fertility Specialists. I'm calling about your donor match." Lucy's mind struggled to catch up. The donor, the appointment. It all seemed like a lifetime ago. I don't think I'll be needing that anymore," Lucy managed to choke out. "Oh," Claire's voice was hesitant. "It's just that, well, this is highly unusual, but the donor we matched you with has specifically requested to be involved in the child's life, should you choose to proceed." Lucy's world, which had been spinning out of control, suddenly ground to a halt. "What? Is that even allowed?" "Normally, no," Claire explained. "But this donor, he's quite influential, and he's offering substantial financial support for both you and the child. Dr. Patel thought you should at least be made aware of the offer before making a final decision." As Claire continued to explain the unprecedented situation, Lucy's mind whirled with possibilities. Just hours ago, her life had a clear, if painful, trajectory. Now she stood at a crossroads she never could have imagined. On one hand, the idea of bringing a child into her now chaotic life seemed impossible. On the other, the thought of walking away from what might be her only chance at motherhood made her heart ache. And then there was this mysterious donor, this man who wanted to be more than just an anonymous contribution to her dream. Who was he? What were his true motives? As the call ended, Lucy found herself standing in the middle of her living room, surrounded by the remnants of her old life, photos of her and Mark, mementos from trips with Sarah. But amidst the ruins, a tiny seed of possibility had taken root. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, Lucy felt a spark of something she had almost forgotten: hope. Whatever came next, she knew one thing for certain: her life would never be the same again. Little did Lucy know that her decision in this moment would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, family, and the lengths people will go to protect their secrets. The road ahead would be fraught with unexpected twists, heartbreaking revelations, and moments of breathtaking joy. But for now, standing in the wreckage of her old life, Lucy took a deep breath and prepared to take the first step into an uncertain but potentially extraordinary future. The weeks following Mark's confession passed in a haze of grief and anger for Lucy. Each day brought new challenges as she navigated the wreckage of her former life. The house, once a symbol of her shared dreams with Mark, now felt like a mausoleum to their failed marriage. Every room held memories that cut like shards of glass. The kitchen where they'd shared countless meals, the living room where they'd cuddled on lazy Sunday afternoons, the spare bedroom they'd hoped would one day become a nursery. Lucy threw herself into work, grateful for the distraction her job as a high school English teacher provided. But even there, she couldn't escape the pitying glances from colleagues who'd heard about her separation. The whispers followed her down the hallways, a constant reminder of her humiliation. Did you hear? Her husband left her for her best friend. Poor thing, and after all those fertility treatments too. One particularly trying afternoon, Lucy found herself in the teacher's lounge, staring blankly at her untouched lunch. Karen, a fellow English teacher and one of the few people Lucy still considered a friend, slid into the seat across from her. "You look like you could use this more than me," Karen said, pushing a chocolate bar across the table. Lucy managed a weak smile. "Is it that obvious?" Karen's eyes softened with concern. "Have you thought any more about what Dr. Patel suggested? About the donor?" Lucy's hand instinctively moved to her still flat stomach. In the chaos of the past few weeks, she'd almost forgotten about the fertility clinic's call. Almost, but not quite. The possibility of motherhood, even under these strange circumstances, had been a lifeline she clung to in her darkest moments. I think I'm going to do it," Lucy admitted, the words feeling both terrifying and exhilarating as she spoke them aloud for the first time. "I know it's crazy with everything that's happened, but this might be my only chance to have a baby. I can't walk away from that." Karen reached across the table, squeezing Lucy's hand. "It's not crazy. It's brave. And for what it's worth, I think you're going to be an amazing mum." That evening, Lucy made the call to Dr. Patel's office. As she listened to the clinic's receptionist schedule her next appointment, a mix of emotions swirled within her: hope, fear, determination, and a hint of something else: excitement. 2 days later, Lucy found herself once again in Dr. Patel's office, this time to discuss the unusual circumstances surrounding her potential donor. "Lucy, I want you to understand that this situation is highly unconventional," Dr. Patel began, her tone serious. "Typically, sperm donors remain completely anonymous, but in this case, the donor has not only expressed a desire to be involved, but has also offered significant financial support." Lucy's brow furrowed. "But why? Why would someone do that for a complete stranger?" Dr. Patel hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "The donor, Mr. Crawford, he's a rather prominent figure in Columbus. He's expressed that he sees this as an opportunity to leave a meaningful legacy." As Dr. Patel continued to explain the proposed arrangement, Lucy's head spun. The financial support Mr. Crawford was offering would ensure her child would never want for anything: the best schools, the best healthcare, a secure future. But the idea of allowing a stranger such intimate access to her life, to her child's life, filled her with apprehension. "You don't have to decide right now," Dr. Patel assured her, noting Lucy's overwhelmed expression. "Mr. Crawford has agreed to meet with you to discuss the terms in person. I encourage you to take that meeting before making any final decisions." Lucy left the clinic that day with a business card clutched in her hand, bearing only a name and a phone number: Matthew Crawford. It took Lucy 3 days to work up the courage to make the call. When she finally did, a polite but efficient assistant answered, quickly scheduling a meeting for the following afternoon at Mr. Crawford's office in downtown Columbus. As Lucy approached the towering glass and steel building that housed Crawford Enterprises, she felt woefully out of place in her simple blouse and slacks. The receptionist in the marble-floored lobby eyed her skeptically before directing her to the executive elevator. Lucy's stomach churned with nerves as she watched the floor numbers climb. What kind of man was Matthew Crawford? What did he really want? And was she prepared for the answers to those questions? The elevator doors opened directly into a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the Columbus skyline. Lucy's attention, however, was immediately drawn to the man standing behind an imposing mahogany desk. Matthew Crawford cut an impressive figure. Tall and broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair and piercing blue eyes, he exuded an aura of power and confidence. But as he turned to face Lucy, she caught a flicker of something else in his expression: vulnerability, perhaps even nervousness. "Ms. Pearson," he greeted her, his deep voice tinged with warmth. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." As Lucy settled into one of the plush leather chairs facing his desk, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being studied. Matthew's gaze was intense, almost searching, as if he were trying to peer into her very soul. "I imagine you have a lot of questions," Matthew began, taking his own seat. "I know this situation is unconventional, to say the least." Lucy nodded, finding her voice. "That's putting it mildly, Mr. Crawford. I guess my first question is, why? Why offer to do this for a complete stranger?" Matthew's expression softened, a hint of sadness creeping into his eyes. "It's a fair question. The truth is, Ms. Pearson, I've achieved a great deal in my life, more wealth and success than I ever dreamed possible. But lately, I've found myself wondering about my legacy. What will I leave behind when I'm gone?" He paused, his gaze drifting to a framed photograph on his desk. Lucy couldn't make out the image from where she sat, but she noted the way Matthew's fingers brushed the frame, almost reverently. "I never had children of my own," he continued, his voice quieter now. "And at my age, it's unlikely I ever will. When I learned about the opportunity to help someone like yourself, someone who so deeply desires to be a parent, well, it felt like fate." Lucy listened, her skepticism warring with a growing sense of empathy for this man she'd just met. There was a loneliness in Matthew's eyes that resonated with her own feelings of isolation. "And the financial support," she pressed, needing to understand the full picture. It's incredibly generous, but you're wondering what strings are attached," Matthew finished for her, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "I assure you, Miss Pearson, my intentions are purely to ensure that you and the child want for nothing. I'm not looking to buy my way into your lives or to control you in any way. I simply want to provide the resources for you to give this child the best possible life." As their conversation continued, Lucy found herself gradually relaxing. Matthew was articulate and thoughtful, answering her questions with patience and apparent honesty. By the time an hour had passed, Lucy felt herself warming to the idea of this arrangement. "I understand this is a lot to process," Matthew said as their meeting drew to a close. "Please take some time to think it over, and if you have any more questions, don't hesitate to reach out." Lucy left Crawford Enterprises that day with her head spinning. The meeting with Matthew had gone better than she could have hoped, but doubts still nagged at her. Was she really prepared to bring a child into the world under these circumstances? And could she trust Matthew's motivations, no matter how genuine they seemed? Over the next few weeks, as Lucy began the IVF process, she found herself in frequent contact with Matthew. He was always respectful of her boundaries, never pushing for more involvement than she was comfortable with. But with each interaction, Lucy felt herself growing more curious about the man behind the polished exterior. It was during one of her follow-up appointments at the fertility clinic that Lucy's resolve was truly tested. As she sat in the waiting room, flipping absently through a magazine, a familiar voice caught her attention. "Lucy." She looked up to find Sarah, her former best friend, standing before her. Sarah's face was a mask of shock and guilt, her hand resting protectively over her visibly pregnant belly. Lucy felt as if all the air had been sucked from the room. She hadn't seen Sarah since the night Mark's affair came to light, and the sight of her former friend, glowing with impending motherhood, hit Lucy like a physical blow. "What are you doing here?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucy's jaw clenched, anger and hurt warring within her. "I think that's pretty obvious, don't you?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Lucy, I'm so sorry for everything. I never meant—" "Save it," Lucy cut her off, rising from her seat. "I don't want to hear your excuses." As Lucy brushed past Sarah, fighting back tears of her own, she was stopped by the gentle touch of a hand on her arm. She turned to find Matthew standing there, concern etched on his face. "Lucy, is everything all right?" The genuine care in his voice broke something loose inside her. Without thinking, Lucy stepped into Matthew's embrace, allowing herself to be comforted by this man who was still, in many ways, a stranger. As Matthew led her out of the clinic, his arm protectively around her shoulders, Lucy caught a glimpse of Sarah's stunned expression. In that moment, a seed of determination took root in Lucy's heart. She would have this baby, and she would build a new life for herself, one that didn't include the people who had betrayed her so deeply. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of doctor's appointments, hormone treatments, and emotional highs and lows. Through it all, Matthew remained a steady presence in Lucy's life. He never pushed for more than she was willing to give, but he was always there when she needed support. It was a crisp autumn day when Lucy received the call she'd been both hoping for and dreading. Dr. Patel's voice was warm with excitement as she delivered the news. The IVF had been successful. Lucy was pregnant. As the reality of her situation sank in, Lucy found herself overwhelmed by a tidal wave of emotions. Joy, fear, excitement, and uncertainty battled for dominance. She was going to be a mother, everything she had ever dreamed of. But she would be doing it alone, without the support system she had always imagined. In a moment of vulnerability, Lucy found herself dialing Matthew's number. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting for her call. "It worked," Lucy said, her voice thick with unshed tears. "I'm pregnant." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, and then Matthew's voice, filled with a mixture of awe and concern. "That's wonderful news, Lucy. How are you feeling?" The simple question was enough to open the floodgates. Lucy found herself pouring out all her fears and doubts, her excitement and her terror, and Matthew listened, offering words of comfort and encouragement. "You're not alone in this, Lucy," he assured her. "I know I can't replace the support system you've lost, but I'm here for you in whatever capacity you need." As the weeks passed and Lucy's pregnancy progressed, she found herself relying more and more on Matthew's support. He accompanied her to doctor's appointments, helped her research childbirth classes, and even assisted in turning the spare bedroom of her house into a nursery. But as Lucy's belly grew, so did her curiosity about Matthew's past. Despite their growing closeness, he remained guarded about certain aspects of his life. Lucy couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story than he was letting on. It was during a quiet evening at Lucy's house, as they pored over paint swatches for the nursery, that Lucy finally worked up the courage to probe deeper. "Matthew," she began hesitantly, "can I ask you something personal?" He looked up from the color samples, his blue eyes curious. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Lucy took a deep breath. "You mentioned once that you never had children of your own. I was wondering, why is that? If you don't mind me asking." A shadow passed over Matthew's face, and for a moment Lucy thought he might not answer. But then he set down the paint chips and turned to face her fully. "It's a fair question," he said, his voice low. "The truth is, Lucy, there was a time when I thought I would have a family. I was engaged years ago to a woman named Claire. We had it all planned out. The wedding, the house, the kids. But then—" He trailed off, his gaze distant. Lucy reached out, placing her hand over his in a gesture of support. "What happened?" she prompted gently. Matthew's eyes refocused on her, filled with a pain that seemed fresh even after all these years. "There was an accident. Claire was— She didn't make it. After that, I threw myself into my work. Building my company became my sole focus. I told myself I didn't have time for a family, that it wasn't meant for me. But the truth is, I was afraid of opening myself up to that kind of loss again." Lucy felt her heart break for him. Without thinking, she moved closer, wrapping her arms around Matthew in a comforting embrace. She felt him stiffen for a moment, before relaxing into her hug, his own arms encircling her. As they sat there holding each other, Lucy felt a shift in their relationship. Matthew was no longer just the donor, the benefactor. He was becoming something more, a friend, a confidant, perhaps even... Lucy pushed the thought away, not ready to examine it too closely, but she couldn't deny the warmth that spread through her at Matthew's touch, or the way her heart raced when he looked at her with those piercing blue eyes. As her pregnancy progressed, Lucy found herself caught between her growing feelings for Matthew and her lingering fears about trusting anyone again. The betrayal by Mark and Sarah had left deep scars, and the idea of opening her heart to someone new terrified her. It was during a routine ultrasound appointment that things came to a head. As Lucy lay on the examination table, Matthew by her side, Dr. Patel moved the wand over Lucy's swollen belly. "And there's your baby," Dr. Patel said with a smile, pointing to the screen. "Would you like to know the sex?" Lucy felt Matthew's hand tighten around hers. She looked up at him, seeing her own mix of excitement and trepidation mirrored in his eyes. "Yes," Lucy breathed, her gaze locked with Matthew's. "We'd like to know." Dr. Patel's voice seemed to come from far away as she announced, "Congratulations, it's a girl." Tears sprang to Lucy's eyes as she stared at the grainy image on the screen. Her daughter, their daughter. The realization hit her like a thunderbolt. Somewhere along the way, this had become about more than just her dream of motherhood. Matthew had become an integral part of this journey, of her life. As they left the clinic, walking hand in hand, Lucy knew she had a decision to make. Could she trust her heart to this man? Could she believe in the possibility of a future that included not just her and her daughter, but Matthew as well? The answer, she realized, was both terrifying and exhilarating, because despite her fears, despite the voice in her head warning her to be cautious, Lucy knew that she was falling in love with Matthew Crawford. But even as Lucy grappled with her growing feelings, she couldn't shake the nagging sense that there was more to Matthew's story than he was letting on. The pain in his eyes when he spoke of his past, the careful way he guarded certain aspects of his life, it all hinted at secrets yet to be revealed. As Lucy stood on the precipice of this new chapter in her life, she couldn't help but wonder, was she setting herself up for another heartbreak? Or was this the beginning of the family she had always dreamed of? Only time would tell. But for now, with her hand in Matthew's and her daughter growing strong within her, Lucy chose to embrace hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever secrets were yet to be uncovered, she would face them head on. Because for the first time in a long time, Lucy Pearson felt truly alive. As Lucy's pregnancy progressed into its 7th month, the warmth of early summer settled over Columbus. The city buzzed with life, a stark contrast to the quiet sanctuary Lucy and Matthew had created in her cozy German village home. On this particular Saturday morning, Lucy stood in the newly finished nursery, her hands resting on her swollen belly as she admired the soft pink walls and whimsical woodland creatures that Matthew had painstakingly painted. A gentle knock at the door frame drew her attention. Matthew stood there, a tender smile on his face, as he took in the sight of her. "Ready for our picnic?" he asked, holding up a wicker basket. Lucy nodded, her heart swelling with affection. These quiet moments with Matthew had become the highlight of her weeks. As they drove to Schiller Park, Lucy found herself marveling at how much her life had changed in just a few short months. The pain of Mark and Sarah's betrayal, while not forgotten, had faded to a dull ache. In its place, a new hope had blossomed, nurtured by Matthew's unwavering support and the growing life within her. They settled beneath a sprawling oak tree, Matthew meticulously laying out a checkered blanket and an array of Lucy's favorite foods. As they ate and chatted, Lucy couldn't help but notice the nervous energy radiating from Matthew. He seemed distracted, his usual attentiveness replaced by a palpable tension. "Matthew," Lucy said softly, reaching out to touch his hand. "Is everything okay? You seem off today." He met her gaze, conflict clear in his blue eyes. "Lucy, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have told you a long time ago." Lucy's heart began to race, a cold dread seeping into her veins. "What is it?" "Matthew, you're scaring me." He took a deep breath, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "It's about why I really chose to be your donor. The truth is, I knew who you were before all of this began." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Lucy struggled to process his words. "What? How? Why?" Matthew's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he began to speak, his voice heavy with the weight of long-held secrets. "Do you remember the accident I told you about? The one where I lost Claire?" Lucy nodded, her throat too tight to form words. "What I didn't tell you was that there was another victim that night, a young woman named Emily Pearson." The name hit Lucy like a physical blow. Emily, her sister, the vivacious, beautiful girl who had been taken from them far too soon, killed by a drunk driver when Lucy was just starting college. "How?" Lucy choked out, her mind reeling. "How do you know about Emily?" Matthew's voice was barely above a whisper now. "Because I was there that night, Lucy. I was the one driving the car that hit them." The confession hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. Lucy felt as if the ground had opened up beneath her, swallowing her whole. She scrambled to her feet, needing to put distance between herself and the man she thought she knew. "Lucy, please," Matthew pleaded, reaching for her. "Let me explain." But Lucy was beyond hearing. The roaring in her ears drowned out everything else as memories of that horrible night came flooding back. The police at the door, her parents' anguished cries, the funeral where they buried an empty casket because Emily's body had been too damaged to view. And all this time, the man responsible had been right here, inserting himself into her life, becoming the father of her child. "Don't touch me," Lucy cried, stumbling backward. "How could you? How could you lie to me like this?" Matthew's face was a mask of anguish. "I never meant to hurt you, Lucy. I've spent years trying to make amends, to find a way to right the wrong I'd done. When I learned about your struggle to have a child, I thought maybe this was my chance to give something back to your family." Lucy's mind raced, trying to reconcile the Matthew she thought she knew with this new, terrible reality. So what? This was all just some twisted form of penance, helping me have a baby to make up for killing my sister. No. Matthew's denial was vehement. "Lucy, it started that way, but it became so much more. My feelings for you, for our daughter, they're real. I love you both more than I ever thought possible." The word love cut through Lucy's anger like a knife. She had been so close to admitting her own feelings for Matthew, to embracing the possibility of a future together. Now, that dream lay shattered at her feet. "I need you to leave," Lucy said, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion. I can't look at you right now." Matthew's shoulders slumped in defeat. "I understand. But Lucy, please, when you're ready, let me explain everything. There's more to the story, things you need to know." As Lucy watched Matthew walk away, his head bowed and steps heavy, she felt as if her world was crumbling around her for the second time in less than a year. She sank back down onto the picnic blanket, her arms wrapping protectively around her swollen belly, as sobs racked her body. Hours later, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Lucy finally dragged herself to her feet. She made her way home in a daze, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Anger, betrayal, grief, they all warred within her, threatening to tear her apart. As she entered her house, the silence that greeted her was deafening. She wandered from room to room, every space now tainted by memories of Matthew, the kitchen where they'd shared late-night cravings, the living room where they'd pored over baby name books, and the nursery. Lucy paused in the doorway of the pink room, her eyes drawn to the mural Matthew had so lovingly painted. A family of deer, a strong buck, a gentle doe, and a small fawn stood in a sunlit glade. It was an image of the family Lucy had begun to imagine for herself, for Matthew, for their daughter. The sight broke something loose inside her. Lucy collapsed to the floor, her back against the doorframe, as fresh tears flowed. How could she reconcile the man who had brought so much joy and hope into her life with the one responsible for her family's greatest tragedy? As the night wore on, Lucy's turmoil gave way to a bone-deep exhaustion. She dragged herself to bed, praying for the oblivion of sleep. But rest eluded her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Emily's face, heard the echo of her laughter. And alongside those cherished memories, unbidden images of Matthew crept in. His kind smile, his steadying presence, the way he looked at her with such tenderness. The next morning dawned grey and overcast, matching Lucy's mood perfectly. She moved through her morning routine on autopilot, her mind still struggling to process the events of the previous day. As she sipped her decaf coffee, a concession to her pregnancy that Matthew had insisted upon, her phone buzzed with a text. It was from Karen, her colleague and friend. "Hey, just checking in. You seemed off on Friday, everything okay?" Lucy stared at the message, a humorless laugh escaping her lips. How could she even begin to explain the mess her life had become? But as she contemplated a response, a realization struck her. Karen had known Emily. They'd all gone to the same high school, though Karen had been a year behind them. Before she could second-guess herself, Lucy was dialing Karen's number. "Lucy." Karen's voice was thick with sleep. "Is everything all right?" "I'm sorry, I know it's early," Lucy rushed out, "but I need to ask you something. Do you remember anything about the night Emily died?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, then a rustling sound as Karen presumably sat up in bed. "Lucy, what's going on? Why are you asking about this now?" Lucy took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Please, Karen, it's important. Do you remember any details about the accident, about the driver?" Karen's voice was cautious when she replied. "I remember there was a lot of confusion at first. The police thought it was a hit and run initially, but then... Lucy, where is this coming from?" "Then what?" Lucy pressed, her heart pounding. "Then they found the other car," Karen said slowly. "It had gone off the road, down an embankment. The driver was badly injured, unconscious." "But Lucy, seriously, what's going on?" Lucy's mind raced. Matthew hadn't mentioned any of this. He'd made it sound as if he'd walked away unscathed, carrying nothing but guilt. What else didn't she know? "Karen, I need a favor," Lucy said, an idea forming. "Can you reach out to your cousin at the police department? See if he can get access to the old case files." "Lucy, you're scaring me." Karen's voice was laced with concern. "Please, tell me what's happening." Lucy closed her eyes, fighting back a fresh wave of tears. "I will, I promise, but first I need to know the truth, all of it." After extracting a promise from Karen to make some inquiries, Lucy ended the call. She stood at her kitchen window, staring out at the quiet street without really seeing it. Her hand drifted to her belly, feeling the reassuring movements of her daughter. "What am I going to do, little one?" she whispered. "How can I hate the man who took my sister from me, when he's also given me you?" The baby kicked in response, as if sensing her mother's distress. Lucy managed a weak smile, drawing strength from the life growing within her. Whatever came next, she knew she had to face it, for her daughter's sake, if nothing else. The next few days passed in a blur of sleepless nights and anxious waiting. Lucy threw herself into work, grateful for the distraction of final exams and end-of-year preparations. She ignored the steady stream of texts and voicemails from Matthew, each one pleading for a chance to explain. It was Wednesday afternoon when Karen finally called back. Lucy answered on the first ring, her heart in her throat. "I've got the files," Karen said without preamble. "Lucy, are you sure you want to do this? Some of these details, they're pretty gruesome." Lucy swallowed hard. "I need to know, Karen, please." Over the next hour, Karen walked Lucy through the police reports, coroner's findings, and witness statements. With each new detail, Lucy felt her world shift on its axis once more. The accident hadn't been as clear-cut as she'd always believed. Yes, Matthew had been legally drunk, but he hadn't been driving recklessly. Emily and Claire had been arguing in their car, distracted. They'd run a red light, colliding with Matthew's vehicle, but it was the aftermath that truly shook Lucy to her core. Matthew hadn't fled the scene as she'd assumed. He'd been critically injured, trapped in his mangled car for hours before rescue workers could reach him. He'd spent months in the hospital, undergoing multiple surgeries and grueling physical therapy. "There's more," Karen said hesitantly. After he recovered, Matthew Crawford set up a foundation in Emily and Claire's names. It funds research into traumatic brain injuries and supports families affected by drunk driving accidents. "Lucy, he's donated millions over the years." Lucy sat in stunned silence, trying to reconcile this new information with the narrative she'd constructed in her mind. Matthew hadn't been the callous drunk driver she'd imagined, walking away without a care. He'd been broken, physically and emotionally, by that night, just as her family had been. "Lucy," Karen's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "What are you going to do now?" It was the question Lucy had been asking herself for days, and suddenly she knew the answer. "I need to talk to him," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I need to hear the whole story from Matthew himself." After ending the call with Karen, Lucy took a deep breath and dialed the number she'd been avoiding for days. Matthew answered immediately, his voice a mixture of hope and trepidation. "Lucy, thank God. I've been so worried." "We need to talk," Lucy said, cutting off any further pleasantries. "Can you come over?" The 30 minutes it took Matthew to arrive were some of the longest of Lucy's life. She paced her living room, rehearsing what she wanted to say, trying to sort through the maelstrom of emotions coursing through her. When the doorbell finally rang, Lucy steeled herself before opening it. Matthew stood on her porch, looking haggard and worn. The sight of him, so different from his usual polished appearance, tugged at Lucy's heart despite her best efforts to remain detached. "Come in," she said, stepping aside to let him pass. They settled in the living room, an uncomfortable silence stretching between them. Lucy took a deep breath, meeting Matthew's gaze head-on. "I know more now," she began, "about the accident, about what happened afterward. Why didn't you tell me all of it from the beginning?" Matthew's shoulders slumped, his eyes filled with a pain that looked as fresh as if the accident had happened yesterday. "I wanted to, Lucy, so many times. But how could I dump all of that on you? You were already dealing with so much, the IVF, the pregnancy, your ex-husband's betrayal. I was afraid..." "Afraid of what?" Lucy pressed. "Afraid you'd look at me the way you did in the park," Matthew admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Like I was a monster. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you, of losing our daughter." Lucy felt her anger soften, just a fraction. "So instead, you lied. You let me believe in a version of you that wasn't real." Matthew shook his head vehemently. "No, Lucy, everything between us has been real. My feelings for you, my love for our daughter, that's the truest thing in my life. I couldn't find the right way to tell you about my past without ruining everything." "And now?" Lucy asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Now that I know, where does that leave us?" Matthew leaned forward, his eyes pleading. "That's up to you, Lucy. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, let alone your love, but I want you to know that regardless of what happens between us, I will always be there for you and our daughter, in whatever capacity you'll allow." Lucy closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision before her. Could she forgive Matthew for his role in Emily's death? Could she separate the man she'd grown to care for from the spectre of that tragic night? As if sensing her inner turmoil, the baby chose that moment to deliver a particularly strong kick. Lucy's hand flew to her belly, a small gasp escaping her lips. Matthew was on his feet in an instant, concern etched on his face. "Lucy? Are you all right?" She nodded, managing a weak smile. "She's just very active today. Here." Without thinking, Lucy reached for Matthew's hand, placing it on her swollen abdomen. The moment his palm made contact, the baby kicked again, as if greeting her father. Matthew's eyes widened in wonder, a tentative smile tugging at his lips. "That's incredible." As they stood there, connected by the life they'd created together, Lucy felt some of her anger and confusion melt away. The situation was far from simple, but in that moment one thing became crystal clear. This man, flawed and imperfect as he was, loved their daughter fiercely. And despite everything, Lucy realized she still had feelings for him too. "Matthew," she said softly, meeting his gaze, "I can't promise you anything right now. I need time to process all of this, to figure out how I feel. But I think we owe it to ourselves and to our daughter to try and work through this." Relief flooded Matthew's features, followed quickly by determination. "I understand. And Lucy, I swear to you, no more secrets. I'll tell you everything, answer any question you have. I want to earn back your trust, no matter how long it takes." As Matthew left that evening, Lucy felt a glimmer of hope amidst the lingering uncertainty. The road ahead would be challenging, fraught with difficult conversations and painful memories. But for the first time since learning the truth, Lucy allowed herself to imagine a future where healing was possible. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that there were still secrets lurking in the shadows, secrets that, when brought to light, would test the fragile trust she and Matthew were rebuilding. Because while Matthew had been honest about his connection to Emily's death, there was one crucial detail he had left out. A detail that, when revealed, would shake the very foundation of everything Lucy thought she knew about that fateful night. As Lucy prepared for bed that night, her mind swirling with the events of the day, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The turning point in her story had arrived, but the true test of her strength and her heart was yet to come. The weeks following Matthew's revelation were a delicate dance of tentative reconciliation and lingering doubts. Lucy found herself caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, her growing affection for Matthew at odds with the pain of her past. As summer gave way to autumn, The changing leaves mirrored the transformation taking place in their relationship. One crisp October morning, Lucy stood before the mirror in her bedroom, her hands resting on her now prominent baby bump. At 8 months pregnant, she felt both powerful and vulnerable, her body a testament to the life growing within her. The sound of the front door opening drew her attention, and she smiled softly, knowing it was Matthew arriving for their now routine Saturday breakfast. "Lucy," his voice called from downstairs, warm and familiar. "Up here," she replied, making her way to the landing. "I'll be down in a minute." As she descended the stairs, Lucy caught sight of Matthew in the entryway, a bouquet of autumn flowers in his hands. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the air seemed charged with unspoken emotions. "These are beautiful," Lucy said, accepting the flowers with a gentle smile. "Thank you." Matthew's gaze softened as he took in her radiant appearance. "How are you feeling today?" "Enormous," Lucy chuckled, leading the way to the kitchen. "But good. Dr. Patel says everything's right on track." As they settled into their usual routine of preparing breakfast together, Lucy found herself marveling at how far they'd come. The initial awkwardness that had plagued their interactions after Matthew's confession had gradually given way to a cautious comfort. They'd spent hours talking, with Matthew answering every question Lucy had about the accident and its aftermath. While the pain of Emily's loss would never fully fade, Lucy had begun to see Matthew not as the villain she'd initially painted him to be, but as another victim of that tragic night. "I was thinking," Matthew said as they sat down to eat, "maybe we could visit the foundation today. I'd like to show you the work we've been doing." Lucy felt a flutter of anxiety at the suggestion. She'd learned about the Emily and Claire Foundation in the weeks since their confrontation, but the idea of seeing it firsthand made everything feel more real. Sensing her hesitation, Matthew reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers. "We don't have to if you're not ready. I just thought it might help you understand." Lucy took a deep breath, steeling herself. "No, you're right. I think it's time I saw it for myself." The drive to the Foundation's offices was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. As they pulled up to a modest building on the outskirts of Columbus, Lucy felt her heart begin to race. This place, this work, was the physical manifestation of Matthew's attempts at redemption. Inside, they were greeted by a wall of photos. Victims of drunk driving accidents, survivors of traumatic brain injuries, families who'd received support from the Foundation. Lucy's breath caught in her throat as her eyes landed on a familiar face. Emily, her bright smile forever frozen in time. "Oh, Emily," Lucy whispered, reaching out to touch the photograph. Matthew stood beside her, his presence both comforting and conflicting. "She's the reason for all of this," he said softly. "How your sister? She inspired me to try and make something good come out of that horrible night." As they toured the facility, meeting staff and learning about the Foundation's various programs, Lucy found herself overwhelmed by the scope of the work being done. Support groups for grieving families, rehabilitation services for accident survivors, educational initiatives to prevent drunk driving. It was clear that Matthew had poured his heart and soul into this endeavor. "Mr. Crawford?" A young woman in a wheelchair approached them, her face lighting up at the sight of Matthew. "I didn't know you'd be here today." Matthew smiled warmly, introducing her to Lucy. "This is Sophia. She's one of our success stories." Sophia turned to Lucy, her eyes shining. "Your husband's foundation saved my life. After my accident, I thought it was over for me. But the support I received here, it gave me hope again." Lucy felt a lump form in her throat, torn between pride in the good Matthew had done and the lingering pain of her loss. We're not married," she managed to say, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. Sophia's eyes widened in understanding. "Oh, I'm sorry, I just assumed. Congratulations, by the way, you must be so excited." As they continued their tour, Lucy found herself watching Matthew more closely. The way he interacted with the staff and beneficiaries of the Foundation revealed a side of him she'd only glimpsed before, compassionate, dedicated, and deeply invested in making a difference. Later that evening, as they sat in Lucy's living room, a comfortable silence settled between them. Lucy's mind was still processing everything she'd seen and learned that day. "Thank you for showing me the Foundation," she said finally, her voice soft. "I had no idea. The scale of it all. The lives you've touched." Matthew's eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation. I meant what I said before, Lucy. None of it makes up for what happened to Emily. But I hope it shows you that I've tried to honor her memory, to create something meaningful from that tragedy." Lucy nodded, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "It does. And I think Emily would be proud of the work you're doing." The words seemed to lift a weight from Matthew's shoulders. He reached out hesitantly, taking Lucy's hand in his. "Lucy, I know we still have a long way to go, but I want you to know that my feelings for you, for our daughter, they're real. More real than anything I've ever felt." Lucy felt her heart skip a beat, the warmth of Matthew's hand sending a familiar tingle up her arm. She was about to respond when a sharp pain lanced through her abdomen, causing her to gasp and double over. "Lucy!" Matthew was on his feet in an instant, panic clear in his voice. "What's wrong?" "I don't know," Lucy panted, fear gripping her heart. "Something's not right. The baby." The next few hours passed in a blur of sirens, hospital corridors, and anxious waiting. Lucy found herself in a delivery room hooked up to various monitors as doctors and nurses bustled around her. Through it all, Matthew remained by her side, his steady presence an anchor in the storm of her fear. "Mr. Crawford?" A nurse appeared in the doorway. "There's a call for you at the nurses' station. They say it's urgent." Matthew hesitated, his eyes never leaving Lucy's face. "Go," she urged him, managing a weak smile. "I'll be okay for a few minutes." As Matthew stepped out, Dr. Patel entered, her face a mask of professional concern. "Lucy, I'm afraid we're going to have to perform an emergency C-section. The baby's heart rate is dropping, and we can't risk waiting any longer." Lucy felt a wave of terror wash over her. "But it's too early," she protested weakly. "She's not due for another month." Dr. Patel's voice was gentle but firm. "I know you're scared, but this is the safest option for both you and your daughter. We're going to take excellent care of you both, I promise." As the medical team prepared Lucy for surgery, she found herself wishing desperately for Matthew's return. Despite all the complications in their relationship, in that moment she needed him more than ever. Just as they were about to wheel her into the operating room, Matthew reappeared, his face pale and drawn. "Lucy, I'm here," he said, taking her hand. "I'm not going anywhere." The next hour was the most terrifying of Lucy's life. The sterile brightness of the operating room, the muffled voices of the doctors, the strange sensation of pressure as they worked to bring her daughter into the world. It all felt surreal, like a dream she couldn't wake up from. And then, suddenly, a cry pierced the air, weak at first but growing stronger by the second. "Congratulations," Dr. Patel's voice came from behind her surgical mask. "You have a beautiful baby girl." Tears streamed down Lucy's face as a tiny, squirming bundle was placed on her chest. She looked up at Matthew, seeing her own mix of joy and relief mirrored in his eyes. "She's perfect," Matthew whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "Lucy, you did it. She's here." As Lucy cradled her daughter, marveling at her tiny features, she felt a surge of love so powerful it took her breath away. This was what she had fought for, what she had dreamed of for so long. In that moment, all the pain and uncertainty of the past faded away, leaving only this, the miracle of new life and the promise of a future filled with love. The days that followed were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and moments of breathtaking joy. Lucy and her daughter, whom they named Hope, remained in the hospital for observation, with Matthew a constant presence by their side. It was on their third day in the hospital that Lucy noticed a change in Matthew. He seemed distracted, almost agitated, checking his phone frequently and stepping out for hushed conversations. "Is everything okay?" Lucy asked as he returned from one such call, Hope sleeping peacefully in her arms. Matthew hesitated, conflict clear on his face. "Lucy, there's something I need to tell you. That call at the nurses' station the night Hope was born, it was my lawyer." Lucy felt a chill run down her spine. "Your lawyer? Matthew, what's going on?" He sank into the chair beside her bed, running a hand through his hair. "There's been a development in the investigation into the accident. New evidence has come to light and... Lucy, I don't know how to tell you this." Lucy's heart raced, her arms tightening instinctively around Hope. "Tell me what?" Matthew's voice was barely above a whisper. "They think the accident might not have been an accident at all. There's evidence suggesting that someone tampered with Emily and Claire's car. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, as Lucy struggled to process this information. Tampered? But who would do that? Why? I don't know, Matthew admitted, his face a mask of anguish. But Lucy, if this is true, it changes everything. It means I might not have been responsible for their deaths after all. Lucy's mind reeled, trying to reconcile this new information with everything she thought she knew about that fateful night. But you're drinking. You were over the limit. Matthew nodded, shame clear in his eyes. I was, and that's something I'll regret for the rest of my life. But if someone deliberately caused that crash, Lucy, we need to find out the truth. For Emily's sake, for Claire's, for all of us. As Lucy looked down at Hope's innocent face, she felt a fierce determination take root in her heart. Her daughter deserved to know the truth about her family's past, about the aunt she would never meet. And Lucy realized that she needed answers too, not just for herself, but for Emily's memory. Okay, she said finally, meeting Matthew's gaze. We'll find out what really happened that night. Together. The weeks that followed were a delicate balance of new parenthood and amateur detective work. As Lucy and Matthew settled into a routine with Hope, they also began to dig deeper into the circumstances surrounding the accident. Matthew's legal team provided them with copies of the new evidence. Maintenance records that showed Emily's car had been serviced just days before the crash, witness statements that had previously been overlooked, and grainy security camera footage that hinted at a figure tampering with the car in the college parking lot, where Emily had been the night of the accident. One evening, as Hope slept peacefully in her bassinet, Lucy and Matthew sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of documents and notes. It just doesn't make sense, Lucy sighed, rubbing her tired eyes. Who would want to hurt Emily? She was the sweetest person I knew. Matthew reached across the table, taking her hand in his. We'll figure it out, Lucy. I promise you we won't stop until we know the truth. As they pored over the evidence, a pattern began to emerge. Several of the overlooked witness statements mentioned seeing a dark SUV following Emily's car in the days leading up to the accident, and the figure in the security footage, while blurry, seemed to match the description of a man Emily had briefly dated earlier that year. Wait a minute, Lucy said, a memory suddenly surfacing. Emily mentioned something about a guy who wouldn't leave her alone. What was his name? Jason something? Matthew's eyes widened. Jason Reeves? The name's in one of these reports. He was questioned after the accident, but had an alibi for the night of the crash. Lucy felt a chill run down her spine. We need to look into him. If he was stalking Emily, their investigation took on a new urgency, fueled by the possibility that they might finally uncover the truth. Matthew used his connections to dig deeper into Jason Reeves's background, while Lucy reached out to old friends from college, trying to piece together Emily's final days. As they delved further into the mystery, Lucy found herself growing closer to Matthew. The shared purpose of seeking justice for Emily had created a bond between them that transcended their complicated past. She began to see him not just as the father of her child, but as a partner, someone she could lean on and trust. One night, as they sat on the couch after putting Hope to bed, Matthew turned to Lucy, his eyes serious. Lucy, I need you to know something. No matter what we uncover about that night, it doesn't change how I feel about you and Hope. You've become everything to me. Lucy felt her heart skip a beat. Despite all they'd been through, despite the lingering pain of the past, she couldn't deny the depth of her feelings for Matthew. Slowly, she leaned in, her lips meeting his in a tender kiss. As they pulled apart, Lucy saw her own mix of hope and trepidation reflected in Matthew's eyes. We'll face whatever comes next together, she said softly. For Hope, for Emily, for us. But even as Lucy and Matthew grew closer, the shadows of the past continued to loom. Their investigation was stirring up long-buried secrets, and not everyone was happy about it. Strange phone calls in the middle of the night, a sense of being watched when they left the house. It all added to a growing tension that neither could shake. One afternoon, as Lucy was leaving the grocery store with Hope, she noticed a dark SUV idling across the street. A chill ran down her spine as she remembered the witness statements mentioning a similar vehicle. She hurried to her car, her heart pounding as she secured Hope in her car seat. As she pulled out of the parking lot, Lucy noticed the SUV falling into place behind her. Trying to stay calm, she called Matthew. I think I'm being followed, she said, her voice trembling slightly. A dark SUV, just like the one in the reports. Where are you? Matthew's voice was tense with concern. Lucy, listen to me, don't go home. Drive to the police station, I'll meet you there. Lucy's hands shook as she navigated the familiar streets of Columbus, constantly checking her rearview mirror. The SUV maintained its distance, never falling too far behind. As she pulled into the parking lot of the police station, she saw Matthew's car screech to a halt beside her. He was at her side in an instant, gathering her and Hope into his arms. Are you okay? Did they try to approach you? Lucy shook her head, still trembling. No, they just followed. Matthew, what's going on? Who are these people? Before he could answer, a detective approached them, his face grim. Mr. Crawford, Ms. Pearson, we need to talk. There's been a development in the case. As they followed the detective inside, Hope cradled protectively in Lucy's arms. Both Lucy and Matthew knew that they were standing on the precipice of something big. The truth about that fateful night was finally within reach, but with it came a new set of dangers they couldn't have anticipated. The climax of their journey was approaching, and with it, revelations that would shake the very foundation of everything they thought they knew. As Lucy looked at Matthew, she saw her own determination reflected in his eyes. Whatever came next, they would face it together, for Hope, for Emily, and for the future they were fighting to build. The fluorescent lights of the Columbus Police Department cast harsh shadows across Detective Mike Riley's face as he led Lucy and Matthew into a small conference room. Lucy clutched Hope closer to her chest, the baby's warmth a comforting anchor against the rising tide of anxiety threatening to overwhelm her. Please, have a seat, Detective Riley said, gesturing to the chairs around a worn wooden table. As Lucy settled in, Matthew's hand found hers, offering a reassuring squeeze. The detective cleared his throat, his weathered features set in a grim expression. Mr. Crawford, Miss Pearson, I appreciate you coming in. We've had a significant breakthrough in the investigation into the deaths of Emily Pearson and Claire Donovan. Lucy felt her heart skip a beat at the mention of her sister's name. Even after all these years, the pain of Emily's loss still felt raw. Detective Riley continued, his voice measured. Based on new evidence and witness testimonies, we now believe that the crash was not an accident, but a deliberate act. The words hung heavy in the air, each one a hammer blow to Lucy's understanding of that fateful night. She turned to Matthew, searching his face for any sign of foreknowledge, but found only shock and confusion mirroring her own. What kind of evidence? Matthew asked, his voice strained. The detective pushed a folder across the table. We've uncovered a series of threatening emails sent to Emily Pearson in the weeks leading up to the crash. They were sent from an anonymous account, but our tech team has traced them back to a Jason Reeves. Lucy gasped, the name striking a chord in her memory. Jason, Emily mentioned him once. She said he was just a guy from one of her classes who wouldn't take no for an answer. Detective Riley nodded grimly. It seems Mr. Reeves' obsession with your sister ran much deeper than that, Ms. Pearson. We believe he had been stalking Emily for months, growing increasingly unstable. As the detective laid out the evidence, the threatening emails, eyewitness accounts of Jason's erratic behavior, and most damning of all, security camera footage showing him tampering with Emily's car the day of the crash, Lucy felt as if the ground was shifting beneath her feet. But why? She managed to choke out, tears burning in her eyes. Why would he do this? Based on the content of the emails and interviews with Jason's acquaintances, it appears he had convinced himself that he and Emily were meant to be together, Detective Riley explained. When she rejected his advances, he snapped. The emails suggest he believed that if he couldn't have her, no one could. Lucy's mind reeled, trying to reconcile this new information with the narrative she'd constructed over the years. She turned to Matthew, her voice barely above a whisper. You weren't responsible for the crash at all. Matthew's face was a mask of anguish and disbelief. I don't understand. All these years I thought... Detective Riley interjected, his tone softening slightly. Mr. Crawford, while your blood alcohol level was over the legal limit that night, our accident reconstruction experts have determined that the crash was inevitable due to the tampering with Ms. Pearson's vehicle. Your actions did not cause their deaths. The weight of this revelation seemed to physically crush Matthew. He slumped in his chair, his face buried in his hands. Lucy found herself reaching out to him, her own shock momentarily overshadowed by concern for the man who had become so central to her life. There's more, Detective Riley continued, his expression growing even more serious. In light of this new evidence, We've reopened investigations into several other accidents in the area from around the same time period. We believe Jason Reeves may have been responsible for at least 2 other incidents that were initially ruled as accidents. Lucy's blood ran cold at the implication. How many lives had been destroyed by this man's obsession? How many families had been torn apart, believing their loved ones had died in senseless accidents? As the detective continued to outline the case against Jason Reeves and the steps being taken to apprehend him, Lucy found her mind drifting. She looked down at Hope, peacefully sleeping in her arms, blissfully unaware of the turmoil surrounding her. In that moment, Lucy was struck by the fragility of life, by how quickly everything could change. "Miss Pearson? Mr. Crawford?" Detective Riley's voice pulled her back to the present. "I know this is a lot to process. We'll need official statements from both of you, but that can wait until tomorrow. For now, I suggest you go home and try to get some rest. We'll have a patrol car stationed outside your house as a precaution until we locate Reeves." As they left the police station, the cool night air felt sharp against Lucy's skin, grounding her in the reality of the moment. Matthew walked beside her, his movements mechanical, as if he were sleepwalking. The drive home was silent, each lost in their own thoughts. It wasn't until they were safely inside, Hope tucked into her crib, that the full weight of the evening's revelations came crashing down. Lucy found Matthew in the living room, staring blankly out the window. She approached him cautiously, unsure of what to say or do in the face of this seismic shift in their shared history. "Matthew," she said softly, reaching out to touch his arm. He turned to her, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. "All these years," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. "All this time, I thought I was responsible for Emily's death, for Claire's. I built my entire life around trying to atone for something that wasn't even my fault." Lucy felt her heart breaking for him. The guilt he had carried for so long, the weight of responsibility that had shaped every decision he'd made since that night, it had all been based on a terrible misunderstanding. "You couldn't have known," she said, drawing him into an embrace. "None of us could have known." As Matthew's arms encircled her, Lucy felt the dam break. They clung to each other, years of pent-up grief and guilt pouring out in racking sobs. For Emily, for Claire, for the lives they might have lived if not for one man's twisted obsession. When their tears finally subsided, Lucy pulled back slightly, meeting Matthew's gaze. "Matthew, I need you to listen to me," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "What you've done since that night, the foundation, the lives you've touched, the good you've put into the world, none of that is diminished by this revelation. If anything, it makes it even more remarkable." Matthew shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "But don't you see, Lucy? Everything I've done, every decision I've made, it was all based on a lie. I inserted myself into your life, into our daughter's life, because I thought I owed it to Emily. How can you even stand to look at me now?" Lucy felt a flare of anger at his words. "Is that really what you think? That the only reason you're in our lives is because of some misplaced sense of guilt? Isn't it?" Matthew challenged, pulling away from her. "Be honest, Lucy. If I hadn't approached you about being a donor, if I hadn't pushed my way into your life under the guise of making amends, would we be here right now?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Lucy took a deep breath, forcing herself to really consider Matthew's words. Would they be here together, if not for the twisted path that had led them to this moment? "You're right," she said finally, causing Matthew to flinch as if struck. "If not for your guilt, for your desire to make amends, we probably wouldn't be here right now. But Matthew, look at me." She stepped closer, cupping his face in her hands and forcing him to meet her gaze. "The circumstances that brought us together don't change how I feel about you now. They don't change the fact that you've been there for me through one of the most challenging and beautiful periods of my life. They don't change the love I see in your eyes when you look at our daughter." Matthew's expression softened, a glimmer of hope breaking through the anguish. But Lucy wasn't finished. "I fell in love with you, Matthew Crawford, not because of what you thought you owed my family, but because of who you are. Your kindness, your strength, your unwavering support, those things aren't a lie. They're not some act you put on out of guilt. They're who you are at your core." Tears streamed down Matthew's face as he listened to Lucy's words. "How can you be so sure?" he whispered. Lucy smiled softly, brushing away his tears with her thumbs. "Because I've seen you, Matthew, really seen you. In the quiet moments when you think no one's watching, in the way you've stood by me even when I pushed you away, in the gentle way you hold our daughter. That's the real you, the man I've fallen in love with." Matthew's arms came around her once more, pulling her close. "I love you, Lucy," he murmured into her hair. "You and Hope, you're everything to me. I don't know how to move forward from here. How do I reconcile the last 7 years of my life with this new truth?" Lucy pulled back slightly, meeting his gaze. "We do it together," she said firmly, "one day at a time. And we start by honoring Emily's memory, not through guilt or misplaced responsibility, but by living the lives she and Claire were denied, by cherishing every moment we have with each other and with Hope." As if on cue, a soft cry emanated from the baby monitor. Lucy and Matthew shared a small smile, the familiar sound grounding them in the present moment. "Come on," Lucy said, taking Matthew's hand. "Let's go take care of our daughter." As they walked to Hope's nursery together, Lucy felt a shift in the air between them. The revelation about Emily's death had shaken the very foundation of their relationship, but in facing it together, they had emerged stronger. There were still challenges ahead: the ongoing investigation, the emotional fallout of learning the truth, the process of redefining Matthew's life's work, but Lucy felt a sense of peace, knowing they would face it all as a united front. The next few weeks passed in a blur of police interviews, legal consultations, and sleepless nights spent caring for Hope and processing the seismic shifts in their understanding of the past. Jason Reeves had been apprehended trying to flee the country, and as more evidence came to light, the full scope of his crimes began to emerge. Lucy found herself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions: relief at finally knowing the truth about Emily's death, anger at the years of pain caused by Jason's actions, and a deep, abiding sadness for all the lives that had been irrevocably altered by one man's obsession. One particularly trying afternoon, as Lucy sat in the rocking chair in Hope's nursery, she found herself overwhelmed by the weight of it all. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched her sleeping daughter to her chest, the baby's steady breathing, a soothing counterpoint to her own ragged sobs. Matthew found her like that, his own eyes red-rimmed from the emotional toll of the past weeks. Without a word, he knelt beside the rocking chair, enveloping both Lucy and Hope in a gentle embrace. "I miss her," Lucy whispered, her voice choked with tears. "God, Matthew, I miss her so much. All these years I thought I'd made peace with Emily's death, but now it's like losing her all over again." Matthew pressed a soft kiss to her temple. "I know, love. I know. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to be angry, to be sad. What happened to Emily? To Claire? It's a tragedy beyond words. But Lucy, look at me." She raised her tear-stained face to meet his gaze, finding a fierce determination in his eyes. "We can't change the past," Matthew continued, his voice low and intense. "But we can honor their memory by living the lives they were denied, by cherishing every moment we have with Hope, with each other, by using the foundation to help even more people, to prevent other families from experiencing this kind of loss." Lucy nodded, drawing strength from Matthew's words and the solid warmth of his presence. "You're right," she said, managing a watery smile. "Emily would hate to see us drowning in grief. She'd want us to live, to love, to make the most of every day." As if sensing the emotional moment, Hope stirred in Lucy's arms, her tiny face scrunching up before relaxing into a peaceful expression once more. Both Lucy and Matthew found themselves smiling down at their daughter, marveling at the miracle of her existence. "You know," Lucy said softly, "I've been thinking. We never did decide on a middle name for Hope." Matthew raised an eyebrow, a question in his eyes. "What do you think about Hope Emily Crawford?" Lucy suggested, her heart swelling with a mixture of love and bittersweet memory. Tears welled in Matthew's eyes as he nodded. "It's perfect," he whispered, leaning in to place a gentle kiss on Hope's forehead. "A tribute to the aunt she'll never know, but whose spirit will always be a part of her." As they sat there, a family united in both joy and sorrow, Lucy felt a sense of peace wash over her. The road ahead would not be easy. There were still wounds to heal, truths to face, and a future to build. But in that moment, surrounded by the love of her daughter and the man who had become her partner, in every sense of the word, Lucy knew they would face whatever came next together. The following day brought a new challenge as Matthew prepared to make a public statement about the revelations surrounding Emily and Claire's deaths. As the CEO of Crawford Enterprises and the founder of the Emily and Claire Foundation, his connection to the case had become a matter of public interest. Lucy stood backstage at the press conference, hope securely strapped to her chest in a baby carrier. She watched as Matthew approached the podium, his posture straight and determined despite the clear tension in his shoulders. "Good afternoon," Matthew began, his voice steady as he addressed the sea of reporters. 7 years ago, a tragic accident claimed the lives of 2 young women, Emily Pearson and Claire Donovan. That night changed the course of many lives, including my own. For years, I believed I was responsible for their deaths due to my decision to drive after drinking. This belief shaped every aspect of my life, leading me to establish the Emily and Claire Foundation in an attempt to make amends and prevent similar tragedies. He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. Recent developments in the investigation have revealed that the crash was not in fact an accident, but the result of deliberate tampering with Emily Pearson's vehicle. While this does not excuse my choice to drive under the influence that night, it does change the narrative surrounding the events of that tragic evening. As Matthew continued to speak, outlining the Foundation's commitment to supporting victims of drunk driving, and now stalking and domestic violence, Lucy felt a swell of pride. Despite the shock of recent revelations, Matthew was facing the public with honesty and a renewed sense of purpose. Moving forward, Matthew concluded, the Emily and Claire Foundation will be expanding its mission. In addition to our existing programs, we will be launching new initiatives focused on stalking awareness and supporting victims of obsessive behavior. It is my hope that by shining a light on these issues, we can prevent other families from experiencing the devastating loss that the Pearson and Donovan families have endured. Thank you. As Matthew stepped away from the podium, ignoring the barrage of questions from the press, Lucy met him with open arms. "You did wonderfully," she murmured, mindful of the sleeping hope between them. Matthew's arms came around them both, drawing strength from their presence. "It's just the beginning," he said softly. "There's so much work to be done." Later that evening, as they sat on the porch swing of Lucy's house, soon to be their house they had decided, watching the sun set over the Columbus skyline, a comfortable silence fell between them. "I've been thinking," Matthew said finally, his voice thoughtful, "about the foundation, about our future." Lucy turned to him, curiosity piqued. "Oh?" Matthew nodded, a spark of excitement in his eyes. "What if we expanded the foundation's reach? Not just in terms of its mission, but geographically. We could open branches in other cities, partner with universities for research into stalking behaviors and prevention methods. We could make a real difference, Lucy, on a national scale." Lucy felt her heart swell with pride and love for this man, who despite everything was still driven by a desire to help others. "That sounds amazing, Matthew, but it would be a huge undertaking. Are you sure you're ready for that?" He turned to her, taking her hand in his. "With you by my side, I'm ready for anything. But Lucy, I need you to understand something. This isn't about guilt anymore. It's not about atoning for a mistake I didn't make. This is about honoring Emily and Claire's memory by creating something truly meaningful. And it's about building a better world for hope, for all children. Will you help me do that?" Lucy felt tears prick at her eyes as she nodded. "Of course I will. Every step of the way." Matthew's face broke into a radiant smile, years of guilt and pain seeming to fall away in that moment. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. "Lucy," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I had a whole speech planned, but after everything we've been through, I realized that sometimes the simplest truths are the most powerful. I love you, I love our daughter, and I want to spend the rest of my life building a future with you both. Will you marry me?" Lucy felt her breath catch in her throat as Matthew opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring. It wasn't just the beauty of the ring that moved her, but the promise it represented, a future built on truth, love, and shared purpose. "Yes," she whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Yes, Matthew, I'll marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Lucy felt as if they were stepping into a new chapter of their lives. The past, with all its pain and misunderstandings, would always be a part of their story, but it no longer defined them. Instead, it had shaped them into the people they were now, stronger, more compassionate, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. Just then, Hope's cry echoed through the baby monitor. Lucy and Matthew shared a knowing smile, the reality of parenthood grounding their moment of romance. "Duty calls," Lucy chuckled, rising from the swing. Matthew stood with her, pulling her close for a tender kiss. "Our daughter has impeccable timing," he murmured against her lips. As they made their way inside to tend to Hope, Lucy felt a sense of completeness wash over her. This was her family, not the one she had imagined for herself all those years ago, but one forged through tragedy, resilience, and love. The road ahead would not be easy. There were still wounds to heal, truths to confront, and a legacy to build. The upcoming trial of Jason Reeves loomed on the horizon, promising to dredge up painful memories and force them to relive the darkest moments of their shared history. But as Lucy watched Matthew gently lift Hope from her crib, cooing softly to soothe their daughter's cries, she knew they would face it all together. They had weathered the storm of revelation and emerged stronger, their bond tempered by honesty and shared purpose. The truth about that fateful night had indeed changed everything, but not in the way Lucy had feared. Instead of tearing them apart, it had cemented their connection, giving them a foundation of truth on which to build their future. As Matthew turned to her, Hope nestled securely in his arms, Lucy saw the future reflected in his eyes, a future filled with love, purpose, and the enduring legacy of two lives lost too soon. Emily and Claire's memory would live on, not in guilt and misplaced responsibility, but in the lives touched by the foundation, in the family Lucy and Matthew were building, and in the middle name of the little girl who represented hope in its purest form. "I love you," Lucy said softly, wrapping her arms around Matthew and Hope, completing their family circle. "Both of you, so much." Matthew's free arm encircled her, pulling her close. "And we love you," he murmured, "always." As they stood there, a family united by love and forged in the fires of tragedy and truth, Lucy knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The climax of their story had brought not an ending, but a new beginning, one filled with promise, purpose, and the unshakable bond of a love that had overcome the darkest of secrets to emerge into the light of truth. The weeks following Matthew's proposal and the public revelation of the truth behind Emily and Claire's deaths were a whirlwind of activity and emotion for Lucy and Matthew. As they navigated the complexities of their new reality, they found themselves drawing strength from each other and their shared commitment to honoring the past while building a future together. The trial of Jason Reeves loomed on the horizon, casting a long shadow over their lives. As the prosecution built their case, Lucy and Matthew were called upon to provide statements and potentially testify. The prospect of reliving that fateful night in excruciating detail weighed heavily on both of them. One evening, as they sat in the nursery, Hope sleeping peacefully in her crib, Lucy voiced the fear that had been gnawing at her. "What if I'm not strong enough, Matthew? What if I can't face him in court?" Matthew took her hand, his touch grounding and reassuring. "Lucy, you are the strongest person I know. You've faced so much already and come out the other side. But remember, you don't have to do this alone. I'll be right there with you, every step of the way." Lucy leaned into him, drawing comfort from his steady presence. "I just keep thinking about Emily, about how scared she must have been in those final moments. And then I look at Hope, and Her voice broke, tears spilling down her cheeks. Matthew pulled her close, his own eyes glistening. "I know, love, I know, but that's why we have to do this. For Emily, for Claire, for all the other victims who can't speak for themselves, and for Hope, to make the world a little safer for her." As they held each other, the soft sounds of their daughters breathing a soothing backdrop, Lucy felt a renewed sense of purpose. Yes, facing Jason Reeves in court would be one of the hardest things she'd ever done. But with Matthew by her side, and Hope as her motivation, she knew she could find the strength. The day of the trial arrived, the Columbus courthouse a hive of activity as media and spectators gathered to witness the high-profile case. Lucy stood before the mirror in their bedroom, adjusting her conservative black suit, her hands shaking slightly. Matthew appeared behind her, placing his hands on her shoulders. "You look beautiful," he said softly, meeting her eyes in the reflection. "And strong. Emily would be so proud of you." Lucy turned, straightening Matthew's tie. "She'd be proud of both of us," she replied, managing a small smile, "for facing this together." As they entered the courtroom, Lucy's eyes immediately locked onto Jason Reeves. He sat at the defense table, his once handsome face now haggard and pale. For a moment, Lucy felt a surge of anger so intense it took her breath away. This man had stolen her sister, had nearly destroyed Matthew's life, had altered the course of so many futures with his obsessive actions. But as she took her seat, feeling Matthew's reassuring presence beside her, Lucy made a conscious decision. She wouldn't let hate consume her. Instead, she would channel her energy into ensuring justice was served and into building the life and legacy that Emily had been denied. The trial stretched on for weeks, each day bringing new revelations and emotional testimony. Lucy and Matthew sat through it all, hands clasped tightly as they relived the worst night of their lives through police reports, expert testimonies, and eyewitness accounts. When it was Lucy's turn to take the stand, she felt a moment of panic as she walked past Jason Reeves. But then her eyes found Matthew in the gallery, his gaze steady and supportive, and she drew strength from his presence. "Emily was more than just my sister," Lucy began, her voice growing stronger with each word. "She was my best friend, my confidant, the person who could always make me laugh even on my worst days. She had her whole life ahead of her, filled with so much promise and potential. And in one night, because of one man's obsession, all of that was taken away." As Lucy continued her testimony, painting a vivid picture of who Emily had been and the void her loss had left, she felt a sense of catharsis. For years she had carried the weight of Emily's memory, the unanswered questions about that night. Now finally she was able to speak her truth, to give voice to the sister she had lost. When Matthew took the stand, Lucy watched with a mixture of pride and heartache as he recounted his own experience of that night and the years of guilt that had followed. His voice never wavered as he described how the accident had shaped his life, leading him to create the foundation and ultimately bringing him into Lucy's life. "I spent years believing I was responsible for Emily and Claire's deaths," Matthew said, his eyes finding Lucy's in the gallery. "That guilt drove every decision I made, but now I know the truth. And while I can't change the past, I can honor their memory by living the life they were denied, by working to prevent similar tragedies, and by cherishing every moment with the family I've been blessed with." As the trial neared its conclusion, the mountain of evidence against Jason Reeves was overwhelming. Emails, forensic reports, and eyewitness testimony painted a clear picture of a man whose obsession had turned deadly. On the day the verdict was to be read, the courtroom was packed. Lucy sat between Matthew and her parents, all of them holding hands in a united front. As the jury foreman stood, Lucy felt her heart racing. On the charge of 2 counts of first-degree murder, we find the defendant, Jason Reeves, guilty. A collective exhale seemed to sweep through the room. Lucy felt tears streaming down her face as she turned to Matthew, burying her face in his chest. It was over. Finally, after all these years, there was justice for Emily and Claire. As they left the courthouse, stepping into the bright Columbus sunshine, Lucy felt as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The grief of losing Emily would never fully disappear, but now it was tempered by the knowledge that her killer had been brought to justice. "What now?" Lucy asked softly as they walked to their car, photographers calling out questions behind them. Matthew squeezed her hand. "Now we live. We honor Emily and Claire by making the most of every day we have together, and we keep working to make the world a little safer, a little kinder." In the weeks that followed, Lucy and Matthew threw themselves into planning both their wedding and the expansion of the Emily and Claire Foundation. They decided on a small, intimate ceremony in Schiller Park, the same place where Matthew had proposed and where they had begun to rebuild their relationship on a foundation of truth. As Lucy stood before the mirror on her wedding day, her mother helping her adjust her veil, she couldn't help but think of Emily, how she had always dreamed of being Lucy's maid of honor, of the speech she would give at the reception. The familiar pang of loss was there, but now it was accompanied by a sense of peace. "Emily would have loved this," her mother said softly, as if reading Lucy's thoughts. "She would have been so happy for you, sweetheart." Lucy nodded, blinking back tears. "I know, and in a way she's here with us. In every choice we've made, in the work we're doing with the foundation, she's a part of all of it." As she walked down the aisle, Lucy's eyes locked with Matthew's. The love and admiration shining in his gaze made her heart swell. This man who had entered her life under such complicated circumstances had become her rock, her partner in every sense of the word. Their vows were simple but profound, a testament to the journey that had brought them to this moment. "Lucy," Matthew began, his voice thick with emotion. "I stand here today not just as the man who loves you, but as someone whose life has been irrevocably changed by knowing you. You've taught me the true meaning of forgiveness, of resilience, of love that transcends even the darkest of circumstances. I promise to spend every day of our lives together, honoring the trust you've placed in me, cherishing the family we've created, and working beside you to make the world a little bit better in Emily and Claire's memory." Lucy's voice trembled as she spoke her own vows. "Matthew, our path to this moment has been anything but conventional, but every twist and turn has led us here, stronger and more certain of our love than I ever thought possible. I promise to face whatever life throws our way together, to support your dreams as you've supported mine, and to never take for granted the precious gift of our life together. With you and hope, I've found a home I never knew I was looking for." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, cheers erupting from their gathered friends and family, Lucy felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was where she was meant to be, with Matthew and hope, building a future rooted in love, truth, and purpose. The reception was a joyous affair, filled with laughter and love, but there was also a poignant moment of remembrance. Matthew and Lucy had set up a memorial table with photos of Emily and Claire, along with information about the Foundation's work. As Lucy stood before the table, looking at her sister's smiling face, she felt Matthew's arms slip around her waist. "She would be so proud of you," he murmured. "Of everything you've overcome, of the woman you've become." Lucy leaned into him, drawing strength from his presence. "She would have loved you, you know. Probably would have teased me mercilessly about falling for my sperm donor." Matthew chuckled softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I wish I could have known her. But in a way, I feel like I do, through you and through the work we're doing." As they rejoined the celebration, Lucy felt a sense of peace wash over her. The road that had led them here had been fraught with pain, misunderstandings, and loss, but it had also been paved with love, forgiveness, and a shared commitment to making something meaningful out of tragedy. In the months that followed, Lucy and Matthew threw themselves into their work with renewed vigor. The Emily and Claire Foundation expanded its reach, opening new branches in cities across the country. They partnered with universities to fund research into stalking behaviors and prevention methods, and launched awareness campaigns to educate young people about the dangers of obsessive relationships. Lucy found herself taking on a more active role in the foundation, her background in education proving invaluable as they developed programs for schools and colleges. Matthew, freed from the weight of misplaced guilt, approached their work with a passion and clarity that inspired everyone around them. As Hope grew from a baby to a toddler, Lucy marveled at how their daughter seemed to embody the very spirit of her namesake. She was a constant reminder of the joy that could bloom even in the aftermath of great sorrow. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their home, Hope playing contentedly at their feet, Matthew turned to Lucy with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking," he began, "about everything we've been through, everything we've built together." Lucy raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh? What about it?" Matthew took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "I want to write a book about Emily and Claire, about the accident, about our journey. I think it could help people, show them that it's possible to find meaning and purpose even in the darkest of circumstances." Lucy felt her heart swell with pride and love for this man who continually sought ways to turn their pain into something positive. "I think that's a wonderful idea," she said softly. "It won't be easy reliving it all, but if it helps even one person feel less alone, less lost, it'll be worth it." As they discussed the project, Lucy found herself reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. From the depths of despair and betrayal, she had found a love and purpose she never could have imagined. Matthew, once a stranger linked to her only by tragedy, had become her partner in every sense of the word. The process of writing the book proved to be both challenging and cathartic. Lucy and Matthew spent hours poring over old documents, reliving painful memories, and having deep conversations about how the events of that fateful night had shaped their lives. There were difficult moments, times when the weight of the past threatened to overwhelm them, but they faced each challenge together, drawing strength from their love for each other and for hope. As the book neared completion, Lucy found herself reading the final chapter, tears streaming down her face. Matthew had written a letter to Emily and Claire, pouring out his heart in a way he never had before. "Emily and Claire," it began, "I write this not knowing if you can hear me, but hoping that somehow, somewhere, these words reach you. For so long, I carried the weight of what I believed was my responsibility in your deaths. That guilt shaped every aspect of my life, driving me to try and make amends in any way I could. But now I know the truth, and while I would give anything to change what happened that night, to give you both the lives you deserved, I can't. What I can do is honor your memory by living the fullest life possible, by loving deeply, by working to prevent others from experiencing the pain your families have endured, and by never taking for granted the precious gift of each day. Through a twist of fate I'll never fully understand, your loss led me to Lucy, to hope, to a family, and a purpose I never knew I was seeking. I promise you both that I will cherish them always, that I will strive every day to be worthy of the love and trust Lucy has placed in me. You will never be forgotten. Your spirits live on in the work we do, in the lives we touch through the foundation, and in the middle name of our daughter. Thank you for the impact you've had on my life even though we never met. I hope that wherever you are you can see the good that has grown from the tragedy of your loss, and that it brings you peace." As Lucy finished reading, she looked up to find Matthew watching her, his own eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It's beautiful," she whispered, reaching for his hand. "Thank you for writing that, for putting into words what I've felt but couldn't express." Matthew pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Thank you for giving me the strength to write it, for believing in me, in us, even when the truth seemed too painful to face." As they held each other, the sound of Hope's laughter drifted in from the backyard where she played under the watchful eye of Lucy's parents. It was a reminder of the joy that had blossomed from their shared pain, of the future they were building together. The book, when published, touched hearts across the country. Lucy and Matthew received countless letters from readers who found hope and healing in their story. It opened up new avenues for the Foundation's work, bringing attention to issues of stalking and obsessive behavior in a way that resonated with people on a deeply personal level. As they stood together at a book signing event, Lucy caught Matthew's eye and felt a surge of love and gratitude. Their journey had been far from easy, marked by loss, betrayal, and painful revelations, but it had also been a testament to the power of truth, forgiveness, and love. They had faced their past, confronted their demons, and emerged stronger for it. Together they had built a life filled with purpose and meaning, turning tragedy into a force for good in the world. As Matthew squeezed her hand, his eyes shining with love and pride, Lucy knew that whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face them together. Their story was far from over, but every chapter would be written with the ink of truth, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to honoring the lives that had brought them together. In Emily and Claire's memory, and for Hope's future, they would continue to live, to love, and to make a difference. It wasn't the happily ever after of fairy tales, but something far more real and precious. A life built on the foundation of shared pain, mutual understanding, and a love that had been tested by fire and emerged unbreakable. 5 years had passed since the publication of Matthew and Lucy's book, and life in the Crawford household had settled into a rhythm that was both familiar and ever-evolving. On a warm September afternoon, Lucy stood in the backyard of their Columbus home watching as Hope, now a vibrant 7-year-old, chased butterflies through the late-blooming flowers. "Mummy, look!" Hope called out, her dark curls bouncing as she ran. "I almost caught one." Lucy smiled, marveling at her daughter's boundless energy and infectious joy. "Be gentle with them, sweetheart," she reminded gently. "Remember what we talked about?" Hope nodded solemnly. "Every living thing is precious," she recited, carefully approaching another butterfly with outstretched hands. The sound of the back door opening drew Lucy's attention. Matthew stepped out onto the patio, his salt and pepper hair catching the afternoon sun. He wrapped an arm around Lucy's waist, pressing a kiss to her temple. "How are my girls doing?" he asked, his voice warm with affection. Lucy leaned into him, savoring the comfort of his presence. "We're good. Hope's on a mission to befriend every butterfly in Ohio." Matthew chuckled, his eyes following their daughter's movements. "She's got her aunt's spirit, that's for sure." The mention of Emily no longer brought the sharp pain it once had. Instead, it filled Lucy with a bittersweet warmth, grateful for the ways her sister's memory lived on in hope. "Did you finish your call?" Lucy asked, knowing Matthew had been on a video conference with the Foundation's new Chicago branch. He nodded, a hint of excitement in his eyes. "It went well. The pilot program for high schools is showing promising results. We're looking at expanding to 5 more cities next year." Lucy felt a surge of pride. The Emily and Claire Foundation had grown beyond their wildest dreams, its reach extending far beyond Columbus. Their work in stalking prevention and support for victims of obsessive behavior had gained national recognition, leading to partnerships with law enforcement agencies and educational institutions across the country. "That's wonderful, Matthew," Lucy said, squeezing his hand. "Emily and Claire would be so proud of what you've built." "What we've built," Matthew corrected gently. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Lucy." As they watched Hope play, Lucy reflected on how much their lives had changed. The pain and betrayal that had once defined their relationship had been transformed into a partnership built on trust, mutual respect, and a shared commitment to making the world a little bit better. "Oh, I almost forgot," Matthew said, turning to face her. "I got a call from Sarah earlier." Lucy felt a familiar twinge at the mention of her former best friend's name. While the acute pain of Sarah's betrayal had faded over the years, their relationship remained complicated. "Is everything okay?" Lucy asked, concern coloring her voice despite their history. Matthew nodded. "She's doing well. The divorce was finalized last month. She asked if we might be open to meeting for coffee sometime. She'd like to apologize in person to both of us." Lucy took a deep breath, processing the information. The idea of facing Sarah after all these years brought up a mix of emotions: anger, hurt, but also a tentative curiosity. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that," she admitted. "There's no rush," Matthew assured her, his hand rubbing soothing circles on her back. "If you're ever ready, we can consider it. If not, that's okay too." Lucy nodded, grateful for his understanding. Their journey had taught them both the value of facing difficult truths, but also the importance of respecting each other's boundaries. "Mommy! Daddy! Come see!" Hope's excited voice interrupted their conversation. They turned to see their daughter crouched by the flower bed, her eyes wide with wonder. As they approached, Lucy gasped softly. There, resting delicately on a bright yellow marigold, was a stunning monarch butterfly. Its wings were slowly opening and closing, revealing intricate patterns of orange and black. "It's beautiful," Matthew murmured, kneeling beside Hope. "Can we keep it?" Hope asked, looking up at her parents with pleading eyes. Lucy knelt down, wrapping an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "Remember what we've talked about, sweetheart. Some things are too beautiful to keep. We have to appreciate them in the moment and then let them go." Hope's brow furrowed as she considered this. "Like Aunt Emily?" she asked softly. Lucy felt her heart constrict, amazed once again by her daughter's perceptiveness. "Yes, my love, like Aunt Emily. We carry her in our hearts, in our memories, but we had to let her go." As if on cue, the butterfly's wings fluttered and it took flight, rising gracefully into the air. The three of them watched in awe as it soared higher, eventually disappearing from view. "Wow," Hope breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. Matthew helped them both to their feet, pulling them into a gentle embrace. "That was pretty special, wasn't it?" he said, his voice thick with emotion. Lucy nodded, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. This moment, she realized, encapsulated everything their journey had been about: finding beauty in unexpected places, learning to let go of pain, and cherishing the precious, fleeting moments of life. As they made their way back to the house, Hope skipping ahead, Lucy turned to Matthew. "I think," she said slowly, "I might be ready to meet with Sarah. Not right away, but soon." Matthew's eyes widened slightly in surprise before softening with understanding. "Are you sure?" Lucy nodded, feeling a sense of certainty. "Life's too short to hold on to anger. What happened was painful, but I think I'm ready to listen, to try and understand. Maybe not to forgive completely, but to find some closure." Matthew pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I'm proud of you, Lucy. And I'll be right there with you, whatever you decide." As they stepped into their home, the walls lined with photos of their life together, their wedding, Hope's birth, family vacations, and foundation events, Lucy felt a profound sense of gratitude. Their story hadn't been easy or straightforward, but it had led them here, to a life filled with purpose, love, and hope. That evening, as Lucy tucked Hope into bed, her daughter asked a question that caught her off guard. "Mommy, do you think Aunt Emily can see us from heaven?" Lucy paused, considering her words carefully. "I'd like to think so, sweetheart. I believe she's watching over us, smiling at how much you've grown and how happy we are." Hope nodded thoughtfully. "I wish I could have met her, but I'm glad we have the foundation. It's like we're helping people for her, right?" Tears pricked at Lucy's eyes as she smoothed Hope's curls back from her forehead. "That's exactly right, my love. We're honoring her memory by helping others." As Lucy left Hope's room, gently closing the door behind her, she found Matthew waiting in the hallway. Without a word, he pulled her into his arms, understanding the emotional weight of the moment. "She's so much like Emily sometimes," Lucy whispered into his chest. "So perceptive, so full of life." Matthew nodded, his chin resting on top of her head. "She's the best of all of us. Emily, Claire, you, me, their memory and our love, all wrapped up in one amazing little girl." As they stood there, holding each other in the quiet of their home, Lucy felt a sense of completion she had never thought possible in the aftermath of Emily's death. The road had been long and often painful, but it had led them here, to a life filled with purpose, love, and the enduring legacy of two lives lost too soon. Their story wasn't over. There would be new challenges to face, new opportunities to grow and make a difference, but Lucy knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, as a family, as partners, and as living testament to the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. As they made their way to bed, Lucy paused by the window, looking out at the star-filled Ohio sky. "Good night, Emily," she whispered, a small smile playing on her lips. "Thank you for everything." And somewhere in the gentle breeze that rustled the leaves outside, Lucy could almost hear her sister's laughter, a reminder that love, in all its forms, was the most enduring legacy of all. Stories like this have the power to touch the heart and enlighten the mind. If this resonated with you, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapters of this emotional journey. There's always another story that could brighten your day, and who knows, the next video might be exactly what you need. Click now and we'll see you there.